Good morning. Hi. Hi, everyone. How's it going? It's Wednesday, and I can't begin to tell you how I feel. I mean, it's Wednesday, and I'm beginning to wonder about this climate change thing because it's Scorched Earth Day. So today's officially Scorched Earth Day, not just here in the US. I just want to welcome everybody. I know there are people who are watching from Turkey and stuff like that. And I believe that Turkey is also part of the nations in Europe that will be experiencing this Scorched Earth Day. So take that as you will. How does that feel? How do you feel wearing it? And I know for folks who live in Arizona, who live in Phoenix and Tucson, you're like, you're literally like, and because you're like, we experience Scorched Earth Day most of the year. But the truth of the matter is that much of Europe today, so from Spain all the way to the Czech Republic, will be experiencing Scorched Earth Day, which started already. So much of Europe is 5 hours ahead of us, right? So they're experiencing that. And we here in the United States have been slow to talk about it because we have so much to talk about. That's the first thing. We're almost heading into 2020. So people are galvanizing and talking a lot about electioneering and stuff like that and all kinds of stuff instead of focusing on climate change because maybe we don't want to talk about it. I don't know. Or maybe it's not a popular thing to talk about because most Americans think that climate change is hocus pocus, right? Most Americans think that climate change is hocus pocus and that climate change is something that people make up, right? But here's something that I read last week that details why Europe is experiencing this. And we're going to talk about that. And of course, Omarosa being sued by the Justice Department. Has anyone seen that? We all saw that coming, right? And you're all like, yep, that was coming. That was coming. We knew that was coming. So it's kind of like, I know it didn't catch her unawares. I know she must have prepared for that because you don't work for someone and then go write a tell-all book. Hey, welcome. It's your first day on Periscope. So you don't work for someone and then go write a tell-all book while they're still in power and think that it's just going to go away. It doesn't work like that. So I don't know who her advisors are or were. That book should never have been written yet. That was an error in judgment. Shall we say error in judgment? Yeah, error in judgment. So now she's paying for that, right? That's just something you don't do because nobody should tell you that you don't write a tell-all book while the person still has the power, right? Because if you're going to write a tell-all book, if they're still in power, you don't write the book and name them. You write the book if they're still in power and make it hypothetical, sort of like a 1984 situation. You know what I mean? Or you wait until they leave power and find some other way to make yourself still current and relevant, right? Because the money you're going to make from it is going to be short-lived compared to the galvanized lawsuits that they're going to make sure that you spend some time in jail, right? So she's headed, Omarosa is headed for some serious stuff that is ahead of her. And I don't know that she has the infrastructure. First of all, here's how I look at it. You don't go after powerful people unless you have some serious infrastructure backing you up. The only way you go after them is that you know that you have some serious backing and you know that they cannot reach you because of your conference with the public. So going after you would be detrimental to their public persona. Outside of that, you don't go after people who have more power than you, especially someone who has the reins of the United States government in their hands. You don't do that. And I don't think any of us needed to tell her that. You see, that is just something she should have known. So now she's going to pay the price. Omarosa, she's going to pay the price for it. Watch my words. They're suing her for a penalty of $50,000 because after you leave a government job, you are supposed to file financial disclosure forms. According to her attorney, they're saying that the financial disclosure forms, the information to disclose in those forms, she could not have access to them because the White House would not release her documents, 7 boxes of documents. She was not allowed to leave the White House with the documents. She was escorted out. She was not allowed to leave the White House with the documents. So the documents have been there for months. She's been asking for it. And after the deadline passed was when the White House said, okay, we'll send you the files. Then on May 10th, then after the deadline passed some more, she still couldn't get the documents. So it's like, girl, please, you know they were going to fire you. You keep those documents with you away from there at all times. Do you know what I'm saying? You knew it wasn't like he woke up one morning, they woke up one morning and said, you're not going to be here. You knew this was coming. You kept those things. So I don't know who her advisors are or were. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me how people who have occupied public spaces often fall prey to the simplest little things. I have been in contact with 2 people here locally who fell, right? They were both men, and they fell from grace. And I asked the same question. Who was advising you when you were going through? And they look at me, and I'm like, with all the positioning and the power that you had access to, you mean to tell me you did not think it was in your best interest to engage the services of a crisis manager or public relations consultant? I said, you didn't think so? You just thought that the power belonged to you and you could do whatever? I said, you didn't know about public opinion, and you didn't know about the fact that the people who control stuff around you have the controls. It's amazing to me. It amazes me how much people in public places and people who occupy positions of power, how it's not naivety. It's not that they don't know. It's that they ignore the signs and don't engage with someone. I mean, people have had a lot of it. When you look at it, I'm like, that's a public relations issue. You could have controlled the messaging around that. And by controlling the messaging, you virtually eliminate any kind of controversy around it. Case in point, Justin Smollett, right? Justin Smollett is an actor. So when his story started, we thought it was over for him and blah, blah, blah. But he got smart. He engaged a good lawyer who had a PR consultant. Before you know it, they controlled the messaging around the incident. The charges were dropped by the prosecutor because the messaging changed. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is for those of us out there. You know, everybody thinks, you look at people's Instagram profile and people are like, I'm a public figure. And I start laughing. And I'm like, you want something that you don't have the means to sustain because you don't have a clue what is involved. You want something because you think it looks glamorous and you think it makes you feel important when you go to your family reunion and when you're hanging out around your homies. But you don't really know what is required of you, do you? Because if you really did, you would not you wouldn't put yourself there because you're putting yourself there. A lot of folks do that. Now, the people who actually sit in these positions, they should know better. When you have that level of visibility and all eyes are on you and all the cameras are on you, you better really be very, very careful. I can't begin to tell you, when I started to emerge, I sweated bullets because I'm like, God, I got to find me a lawyer. You have no idea. I said, I got to find me a lawyer. There are certain things I have to make sure that I don't do, right? I had to say, where's my PR people? I have to know someone just in case it gets out of control one day or it gets out of hand one day. What is the messaging around this? How do you control it? I kid you not. My background is in marketing, right? So I'm familiar. You could say that it kind of came naturally to me. I'm familiar with public relations and marketing. So I could look at things and I'm like, well, what are you going to say? If you're going to wear that, what kind of message you're going to communicate? What do you say when you go to these spaces? I kid you not. Even sending out a tweet, you're all laughing at me. I kid you not. Even my posts on Facebook and so on. Sometimes I don't post a lot because I'm actually analyzing how is this going to be taken into context? Who is reviewing this? Because my posts are public and I'm not private because I write books, right? How did this happen? How the hell did this happen? Facebook, if you're listening to me, you need to fix this because we're not friends. Okay? Facebook just literally just did something that I'm not liking, right? They literally just shut off one of my cameras. I think somebody does that deliberately. Unable to find camera. Are you kidding me? My camera is not off. Oh, there's a virus in here that shut my camera off. Are you listening to this? Are you listening to this? I kid you not. Somebody shut my camera off. There's a virus on one of these devices. Unbelievable. But anyway, so what we're talking about, so now I have to go find it. To heck with that. You don't know me very well, do you? I'm not the person who you want to mess with. I will call you up. But do you see what I'm saying? So a lot of what happens to people is that people and you have to be careful. Years ago, I told a prominent preacher to hire what I refer to as a goodwill ambassador. He laughed at me. He thought I was funny. That was in 2011. So that's what, 8-9 years ago. Right. And he laughed at me and thought it was funny until he ended up in a scandal. And this is me sitting back all day, just watching him flail out when the scandal erupted. What did I say? Hire a goodwill ambassador who becomes the public face of your organization and who becomes the public face of your product or brand, right? The goodwill ambassador is the public face. Let them filter all the information out. But you know what happens to most people? Guess. Most people want to do what? They want to be seen in front of the cameras. They want to be on the 6 o'clock news. They want to say to their homies, man, did you see me on the news? Or they want to come and tell people, I was just on the news and I'm the man and I'm the this and I'm the that, right? And so what happens is that people then become afraid of what they're doing. So they don't know. They don't know how to navigate these situations when it happens, right? And this is the stuff that happens to people. And what happens is we don't know sometimes, you don't know what it is that you need to say in moments of crisis, because especially when you are the crisis. So let's say you're the leader of your organization. The crisis happens, not in the organization, but you are the crisis. And the cameras come at you with the microphones. And you're like a deer caught in the headlights because you don't know how to control it because you're emotional. You don't want to do this. You don't know what to say. And they're going to come at you, right? Such is the situation that some folks have found themselves in. So Omarosa, her goose is cooked, literally and figuratively, because now they're going to find a way to shut her down. And this is how they're going to get back at her for the stuff, right? That she did. You can't mess with the people who control the power while they're in power. That just does not make sense. It does not make sense. You wait, especially if you were part of the inner circle. You can't do that. That doesn't make sense. Did you see what's his name did, Snowden? He took off and went to where? Russia. Not coming back ever. Because he recognized that he did things that were damaging, that was going to cost him. And he will never get away from it. It could be 50 years from now. They will catch up with him. Right? There are just some things that you just don't do. If you spend time around powerful people enough, you know some of these things. And what you do is you take it under advisement. Right? And then you go and find a way to communicate how you feel, because powerful people have tentacles. People will visit you in the night. People will visit you at the gas station. People will visit you while you're in your bathroom sitting on your toilet. You don't play with them. Do you see what I mean? And a lot of people have not understood that. So Omarosa is shot. And all the people, when she was going through with all of this stuff, I didn't have much sympathy because I felt like, well, you're playing with fire. So go ahead. I'm not joining you on this one. I kind of left it alone. I was just like, because I could see coming down the road how this one is going to backfire. And this is just the beginning. They know you and they know your vulnerabilities, and they will come at you and attack you in your vulnerabilities. Do you see what I'm saying? And they will use your vulnerabilities because they know you don't have the power and the infrastructure to withstand it. So take a lesson out of Sarah Sanders' book. Sarah Sanders was the White House press secretary. You know, she didn't criticize anybody. She just said it all in front of us. Even if we all call her all kinds of names, the media dogs her, calls her all kinds of names. She's not saying anything because she knows. Do you see what I'm saying? No, maybe 10 years from now, she will say something. But right now, she's not going to say anything. Do you see what I'm saying? So you have to know this is something, this is a lesson for all of us who aspire to public spaces. You aspire to work in government, or you aspire to work in the private sector, and you are exposed to powerful people. Be very, very careful how you conduct yourself. If you are going to work in government, whether that government is federal, city, state, county, whatever government is, know yourself and know what you need to do. Cover yourself at all times. There's an old saying, CYOA. Anybody familiar with that? Cover your own, you know what, right? Cover your own. So you make sure that documents are screenshotted, uploaded to your iCloud account. I don't know what people are saying or doing today. I don't know, right? Cover your own, CYOA. Make sure the documents that you need to defend you, they can't be sitting in an office where they're likely to tell you tomorrow morning, don't come back. And that's just for everybody. Some of you all have issues going on in the establishments where you work, and you think you leave them there at home. You leave them at work. I don't believe in that stuff. Take it with you. What if they call you overnight and tell you you can't come back? The only thing you need to go back there for is your coat, or if you left a pair of shoes under the desk like I used to do. I had a whole shoe thing behind my desk in my office when I worked for someone. Like, because, you know, I would say I would change the shoe when I get to work. So they used to laugh at me because I'd have like 10 pairs back there. I just slip into them. Right? But those are the only things that you should. But stuff like your planner and your own personal device, especially you walk into somewhere like the White House where they have equipment that scans your devices to capture what kind of conversations you have. One ain't walking in there with my personal stuff, knowing that I have issues with the powers that be. I ain't doing that. I'm not going to do that. So maybe she thought she was superhero and she was super duper and she was untouchable. Guess she learned her lesson, right? Right. I'm watching what people are saying, and people are just saying good morning. So you asked me, Mitchell, what am I talking about? I thought I posted it earlier. We're talking about climate change and Omarosa. We're talking about scorched earth days in Europe, right? I thought I would bring that up because it's important to understand why that is so, because I can't begin to tell you how much I love that stuff. I can't begin to tell you what it felt like. So I wanted to talking about the scorched earth days in Europe. So here's what happened to me. You know me already. I read a lot, just like you. So last week I was scrolling and reading stuff, and I follow certain websites and certain government agencies on Twitter, right? Especially those that affect climate. Part of the reason is because I live in the Midwest, and we've been having extremely cold weather. So at first, I'm going to be honest with you, I was never a believer in climate change. I didn't think it was hocus pocus, but I was waiting on the science to back it up. I thought they were making a whole lot of stuff because they wanted to sell a lot of green stuff, right? But then when the polar when the ice caps began melting, I wanted to know why. And I lived in Montego Bay, a coastal city, and a few miles down was the beach. The beach that I used to go to, I used to be able to just, it was a private little cove, you know what I mean? And very few people knew about it, except the people who know in the community where I lived. And the beach was, you could walk out into the water. Well, what happened was, like, I was pregnant, and by the time the baby was born, she was probably like about 3 months. By the time I took the baby back to the beach, guess what? The coastline had disappeared. There was no longer a beach. The water had risen. So that piqued my interest. I started wondering. This was like in the 90s. I started wondering if there's such a thing as climate change. Well, I moved to Florida, and we were staying in Tampa with some friends because we were contemplating buying a house, whether we were going to live in Tampa, or it was a hot summer. Oh my God, it was so hot. I couldn't breathe. So I didn't choose Tampa. I said, let's go further north to Orlando because it's cooler. I didn't like Miami because it was too hot, too congested. And I thought I would have liked Tampa. It's on the West Coast, and but then it was too many gators and stuff. I was like, oh no, with snakes and all that kind of stuff. Too much for me. But the temperature, it was too humid that summer. So we moved north to Orlando. I liked that. I said, it's, mid Florida, central Florida, nice and stuff. Well, that was also the year of El Nino. And so I stopped. I remember, you remember those days we had AOL as the internet service provider? Who remembers dial-up internet? Y'all don't remember that. You're millennials. You remember going to the internet was you had to plug the phone in you plug the thing in the wall, and you had to wait for it to go. And you were like, man, they must be dialing up everything in the world. Well, I went online to look up what is the story around climate change. Because it was just this new thing. I thought it was just some hocus pocus people way out yonder, way out in left field somewhere, just trying to create something. Turns out they were right. The science behind it started to talk about how coastlines around the world were evaporating because of rising waters. Well, what's causing the waters to rise? Well, the ice caps were melting. And I'm like, the ice caps, is that one of the things that the Titanic crashed into? I'm like, that's some serious stuff here. If that melts, all that water is going to go down. Then I started to think about the equator. And I was like, well, if it's going to get colder in the north, then the places that are hot are going to get hotter. Guess what has happened, y'all? It's gotten hotter. So for years, when they started warning about this, the rest of us were just like, never going to happen. It's something that will never happen, blah, 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 blah. We left that alone. But now we're facing, so now we have some data. So here's what I want to tell you. So since what they're saying is that since 2015, it has gotten hotter. The summers are hotter. They remember now, this is 2019. So they now have more than 100 years of historical weather reports worldwide. So most countries in the world began collecting data and storing data on weather for more than 100 years, right? So now with that kind of information and data, they're looking at patterns. So it's one thing for people to go up in the atmosphere and put out a little stick and check the wind and stuff. But it's an entirely different thing when they have the data to back it up. So in more than 100 years, what they have found is that the summers have gotten hotter. 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and now 19. 19 is going to be the next record. They're saying the summers have gotten hotter. Now, last year, if you remember, in Europe, they had extreme weather in August. Like there were 2 or 3 days, like a whole week in Europe when it was just crazy. I think the last time they had something like that was like in 1992 when people died because they were unprepared. Well, when it happened in 1992, what happened was people just started talking about climate change and they started forecasting how this was going to get worse. And everybody said it was hocus pocus. Well, here we are in the future. The future is now. The future now is saying that it's going to get hotter and hotter. So I started asking. So I called my sister. One of my sisters still lives in Montego Bay, Jamaica. And I called her in Kingston, actually. And I asked her. And she says in the last 5 years, their temperatures have soared and the summers are hotter and hotter. So I began to think, so south of the border is getting hotter. What does that mean for people? You can talk about crops, right? And you can talk about animals, but what about the people? They're hiding the data. Here in the US, I can't find the data on what's happening in Arizona and Nevada, right? Texas, Southern Texas. I can't find the data on it. So if you find it, let me know. I can't find it. Because what I'm thinking, because here in Michigan, we had a really hot summer last year. Anybody lives in Michigan? Y'all remember what it felt like last summer? It was extreme. Here in Michigan, we're accustomed to temperatures in the 70s, 80s, may go up to 90, maybe 1 or 2 days, 3 days at the most for the entire summer period in Michigan. Last year, we had temperatures over 100 degrees for days, y'all. When you going outside was a walk for your life, right? And it was so unusual because we're not accustomed to it. And you know what happens to us? You become acclimated, right? You become acclimated, you get used to it. Well, we couldn't get used to it because here we are acclimated to colder weather, cooler weather, right? Okay, so here we come. And here is Europe having a scorched earth day today and tomorrow. So Spain, if you look at the map, I should have posted a map of Europe, but I'm assuming that we all know what Europe looks like. And most of us have been to Europe, right? I've never been to Spain, and I've never been to France, but I'm familiar with Germany and England. That's as much as my European experience has been so far, right? It will change. It will change. I want to go to Spain, right? But here's the thing. So they're saying Spain, the way the countries sit, it's coming from Africa and it's moving north. So the first place it's going to hit is Spain. And then it's going to move into France, Italy, Germany, the Czech Republic, and it's just going to continue. So they're focused on Europe for obvious reasons. So it's going to hit where? Talk about it. It's going to hit the Middle East because it's going to go around. Because the world is a globe. The world is not flat. It's around. So when it goes around, going to come back over here, right? So you don't believe in it? Well, here's some things for us to think about. Even in countries like Norway and Sweden, places I have not been, but I would like to go, I probably will go, extremely northern countries, they're seeing some unusual kinds of activity that they have not seen since the years they have been following this. They're seeing extreme climate activities that is saying that there has been a shift. Now, I want to bring your attention back to something that happened. Do you remember the earthquake in Haiti? Remember that? 2010 when that happened? Anybody remembers? Okay, you remember the year we had the earthquake in Chile? That one you remember. According to scientists, the earthquake in Chile was so violent that it shifted the Earth's axis and moved the Earth's positioning 2 degrees closer to the sun. Hello? Just something that they might have glossed over or they forgot to mention, but it did happen. If you follow the National Weather Service or National Geographic, they will tell you all kinds of stuff, and follow the government agencies that supports that. You will read some of the most interesting stuff ever, right? So what happened was when the Earth's axis changed, and it changed our global or positioning, not our global positioning as it relates to the to things here in the world, but our galaxy, I should say our galactic positioning, how we are in the galaxy. What it did was it shifted us closer to the sun. Hence why we're now experiencing what? These patterns of weather here. So the Earth is moving and rotating and going closer to the sun. What does that mean? It means longer periods of daylight. We're seeing that because once upon a time here in Michigan, you never saw lighter evenings, lighter evenings until way into February. Now we're seeing it in January. Lord Jesus, it turns January and all of a sudden 4 o'clock is no longer dark, right? So as the Earth is moving closer, what that says is that countries that are further south are going to experience drought. We're seeing that even here in America, right? We're seeing drought, and we're going to see more of these kinds of extreme weather. So it's summer, more extreme heat, which means most of your population is going to have a problem. And in winter, more extreme cold, which means your population is also going to have a problem, right? Then how does that affect your food supply? How does it affect the distribution of water? Do you see what I'm saying? The things that make life livable for humanity: water and food, water and food. Those are must haves. We must have water and we must have food. Whether that food comes processed or what, we must have food. So if there are extreme weather conditions, it is going to affect crops, the foods that we plant, right? And it is going to affect the water that supports the crops that we eat. And it's going to affect the water that human beings need to live. Water to flush your toilets, water to wash your hands, water to take a shower, water to do your laundry. The stuff that we take for granted here in America. Have you ever read these reports that say that it takes over 2 gallons of water to flush a toilet? Remember that? And how while we are brushing our teeth and we leave the water running, that's like 5 gallons of water running down the drain, right? It has made me conscious, because I was one of those persons who did that until I got a water bill. And then I had to start looking at what I was doing, right? And we take showers that last forever. If you have a teenager in your house, you know what I'm talking about. A millennial, they go in the shower and all the hot water is drained out of a 40-gallon water tank. 40-gallon hot water tank. Whoa, right? People wash clothes and drop 2 items of laundry, of dirty laundry in the washing machine for a whole big pan that can hold. And you're like, well, what's going on here, right? The stuff that we take for granted. We leave the tap running. We water our lawns and just turn the sprinklers on and, water our lawns. We wash our cars. Hey, the stuff that we take for granted for most of the world is a struggle, right? Somebody posted a picture some time ago, Waka Flocka. I think I took a screenshot of it because I want to remind myself. And in this post, he said this. The picture was about a little boy somewhere in the world who the only access he had to water was dirty water that he found in a stream, and he was drinking it. And Waka Flocka, the singer, said, "Lord, help me to never forget. Every time I forget your goodness and mercy, remind me that I never have to do that." And that shook me, because for most of the world, their running water comes from places that you and I would find unacceptable, places that you and I would say that should not happen. Do you see what I'm saying? So we need to be more concerned and to be more conservative, not only in our usage of water, but be mindful of what is that. I'm not saying that you should go out and do some radical stuff like don't use plastic products. And I'm like, what are you going to replace the plastic with? Because if you all remember, they told us to stop using paper bags that were biodegradable and use plastics. And now they're saying the plastics is showing up in Wales. And there is like a whole size of Texas size thing of waste floating in an ocean somewhere, long as it doesn't get to California nor the East Coast of the United States. I mean, you all go work that stuff out, right? You can burn the stuff. Why don't you burn the stuff? Don't put it down in the ground. Burn it. You know what I'm saying? Burn it. Dispose of it. When they were burning, it was sending off greenhouse emissions. This is what turned off most of us off the science of climate change. They made too much noise about the unnecessary stuff, because at some point as humanity, we do have to dispose of our mess. How we dispose of it is the issue. So you can't tell us you can't dispose of your waste by burning it, that sets off fumes, and then tell us to go safely collect all the plastic and we'll recycle it, and it never gets recycled. So countries are selling their waste. New Zealand put up a thing the other day on Instagram where they said, we're not taking any more. It wasn't New Zealand. It was not Bangladesh. Singapore said, we're not taking any more waste from anybody. If you put it over here, we're going to sanction you. Go figure. And I was appalled. They were talking about waste that was coming from the UK. And I'm like, you guys can burn that stuff? So on the one hand, that's what turned most of us off climate change, because we were like, are you saying that's all hocus pocus? It's not going to happen, but it does. We know that climate change happens, and we know that we are impacted by it because certain places in this country, in Virginia, for instance, where people are exposed to the waste that comes out of certain factories, that their health is directly impacted, whether they develop respiratory problems, that happens, or there's stuff that goes down in the water and people drink it, and there are large incidences of cancer from it. Yes, because the pesticides that is manufactured in a factory, guess where? All that stuff goes in the water untreated and just dumps into the water. That goes into the water table where the residents get the water that is recycled. Because we all know how this works. Everything is a cycle. Life is a cycle, right? So everything is a cycle. So the rain falls, comes down, goes in the earth. They capture it in a reservoir. They clean the water out and distribute it as clean water. You flush the toilet, you do the laundry, and it goes back into the system. It goes up as precipitation, becomes rain. Precipitation becomes rain. You're following me, right? So that's how come they were saying that you have to be careful of the greenhouse emissions, because what goes up comes down and it becomes part of the rainfall that comes down. That is inherently safer than taking all this plastic floating around in an ocean somewhere that's not going anywhere. That don't make no sense, right? Burn the stuff and get rid of it. Just burn it, right? Okay, so now when you look at it, there is science and then there's experience. There's your experience, because many of you grew up just like I did, and you were curious about, well, where the water comes from out of the sky. I used to ask that. Then how does the sun know it should rise at 6 o'clock in the mornings? I used to ask my grandfather that. And I used to say, that doesn't make any sense. How does the sun know when to come up? And I would ask him questions. The poor man, I guess that's where I got the term Y has a long tail and it ends in a V. I guess that was the best way he could explain it to me, because I exhausted him with my questioning. And then where does the moon come from? Then what does the moon have to do with the sea? And what does the moon have to do with anything? And my grandparents, my maternal grandparents were what? Farmers. So they followed the cycles, right? They followed the farm cycles and had the farmer's almanac, because they were planters. So they had to know when it was going to rain, when it was time to plant, when it's time to reap, and so on. So they had that thing going on. And I was fascinated, but not really fascinated. Like I was fascinated, but I didn't want to touch the dirt. Then I was a kid, I rolled in the dirt. And then one day my grandmother said, enough is enough. Enough of the curiosity about that stuff. You're a girl, go sit down. Play with dolls. I kid you not. But I was still curious about it because I wanted answers. And now I understand where that comes from. It comes from wanting to know, how do things originate and what happens. It's like, just like any kid, I even with your washing machine, the water goes down. Do you follow it? Like you look and you're like, the water is dirty. That's why they have the lint trap to capture the lint so it doesn't go down, so I don't have a problem with my sewage system. Do you see what I'm saying? My plumber came back in the fall because it was raining heavily, and like everybody else in Michigan, your basement flooded. My basement overflowed, so we had a bit of a problem. So the plumber came, and he was using the Roto-Rooter thingy to go down into the drains to clean it out. All that came out was just, he was like, ma'am, you're lucky you didn't have any blockage. It was just the water coming from the city that created the problem. And I was like, okay. And he said, apparently you guys never had a problem here because the previous occupants didn't have the thing in the house, the problem. And then he told me the story. Are you ready for this? He told me the story of how he went to somebody's house and there were all women living there. And they had the similar problem and he said, when he pulled stuff out, it was all sanitary pads. And I'm like, how irresponsible are they? And I'm like, they really think that little plastic thing just disappears and that it just goes into oblivion? And he said, and he gave me a laundry list. I kid you not. He says, do not flush tampons, do not flush pads, because that stuff. And I'm like, well, the other thing he told me, which blew my mind, was wet wipes. He said, I said, but they say it's flushable. He said, do not use flushable wet wipes. You know what it did? It reminded me of a story I had seen on the news where somewhere in Clinton Township, remember that scandal some years ago, where they had sewage backed up for days in neighborhoods. And turns out that they had over 40,000 tons of flushable wet wipes that was in the sewer system. That's what caused the problem. It's not biodegradable. So as much as they're telling you it's biodegradable, it isn't. Believe it or not. So what I'm saying is, each of us, it's not about, oh, well, I'm going to save the planet. No, save your planet right where you live. Start right there. Right where you are is where you start. So you start there by making sure you watch your kids. What are you doing in the shower? It's been 5 minutes. What you washing off? Right? You should hear me. You should hear my youngest daughter. Mom! Right? I'm like, what are you washing off? I kid you not. The stuff that goes on in my house is living comedy. Right? And then I'm like, why the toilet flushing so frequently? Because I'm like, that's how many gallons going. So what I do is I take out the water bill. Very instructive. I said, these are how many gallons it says we used last month and the previous month. They're giving us an analysis and a comparison. This is why the bill is so high. People get that immediately. Oh, okay. People get that immediately. It's like your light bill. I paid, you've still paid online, but I like to look at the bill. So I log in and I look at it, right? Okay. So have those kinds of conversations. To remind people when you're washing your hair, how many times you're going to shampoo your hair up and wash it? Like 3 times? Enough. I think after 3 times, it's enough. Remind people of stuff like that. Now, here in the Great Lakes, especially for those of us who live here in Michigan, I don't think we'll ever have a water problem unless they start regulating it, because we live near the lakes, and the lakes cause a lot of precipitation, which is why we get a lot of rain, right? So, and the lakes are full. As a matter of fact, here in Michigan, because we've had 2 winters with so much snow, guess what? The lakes are full. Right now, they're saying if we have another good shower of rain for 2 or 3 days, the Detroit River is going to overflow its banks because it's at flood stage. It's exceeded the levels that it should be, that is considered safe. Most people who live around that never thought that could ever happen. And yet it does, because all the snow that melted. See, these are the things that we don't think about. I said it all winter long. When the snow melts, we're going to have what? Floods. Did we have floods in the Midwest? Absolutely. I said it all winter long. You'll remember, Mitchell, you were part of that conversation too, that when the snow starts melting, we're going to have a problem. Well, we are. So now we're going to dry out a little bit, right? It's going to dry out a little bit. And then after it dries out, we're going to go back into rain and then more snow. So it looks like if that's the cycle and the pattern, what's going to happen? Y'all know we're going to have a problem again and again. So we need to pay more attention. So here's what I do that I hope can help some of you. One of the things that I do is I am sensitive to the sun. Now, some of you are looking at me like, really? We all are. If you don't believe me, you need to turn on a black light on your skin so you can see the sun damage. It is going to illuminate your skin and you're going to cry. And you probably are going to see sunspots deep within your skin that you never knew you had. So here's what I do. I don't wear sunscreen as much as I think I should, because it makes my skin, when I put sunscreen on, my skin stings when I hit the sun. I don't like that. I don't think that's a good thing. So what I do is I wear hats and I cover my arms. Like, I have a nice color now. I'm going to pay for it later. But as of this day, I'm not going to go out without my arms being covered. So I keep something in my car that I can slip on. Wear hats. Hello, everybody. Put on a hat. Put on a hat that shades this part of your skin and shades this part of you. Are you listening to me? Do not send your children out in the middle of the sun. It's going to get hot. So from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. when the sun is at its zenith, for the love of God, stay indoors. Bring your lunch, order it, but stay indoors, right? 4 o'clock, it's still a little hot, but you can live with that. So between 11 and 3, stay out of the sun. So don't go cutting the lawn. For the love of God in Christ Jesus, do not cut the lawn during 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Here in Michigan, in Southeast Michigan right now, it's going to be hot for the next several days. People, stay out of the sun. Run your air conditioning. Worry about the bill later. Gotta stay cool, right? I got mine powered up so bad. I'm praying, hallelujah, Jesus. Blessed be the name of the Lord, right? Right? Keep your air conditioned. Keep your fans on. If you're concerned about your bill, keep the fans in your house on. It helps to keep the area cooler and lessens the bill. Let's work on the air conditioning system, right? Don't worry about it. It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be okay. You don't have to worry about fixing it. It's gonna be all right, right? Keep hydrated. Do not drink sugary stuff. That's not hydration. Drink water. Keep ice and water near you at all times. Drink a lot of water. It keeps you hydrated. This is good for young, old, and middle of the road, right? Keep yourselves hydrated. Pay attention to what they're saying, what the newscasters and the weather forecasters are saying. It's relevant to this time of the year, right? Make sure you're covered. Try to avoid outdoor activities that are going to exert you. You don't want to do that. Don't test fate. Don't tempt fate. Don't tempt it. Don't test it. Right? There are reasons why certain things have happened. Okay? All right? That's what I'm asking each and every one of us to do. Watch your water consumption, right? Under Obama, we never had so much snow. Really? Like, seriously? You're really going to say that? Right? It's climate change. It was trending this way. It was trending this way. So do these things as a matter of course and as a matter of your own precautions, right? Don't go out in the sun. And if you can't wear a hat, right, they have them in the dollar store for $1, so you don't have to go out and spend $55 on a Panama hat now, right? You can get them in the dollar store, right? I have like 3 or 4 of them. I keep 2 in my car and 2 in my house. So at any point, I'm covered, right? Make sure your arms are covered. For those of you who play golf, you know you should not be on the golf course. And if you're in Florida and South Carolina, where alligators abound, you might want to not play golf during the heat of the day, because the gator is looking for some cool water and stuff. You don't want to be his next meal. You don't want that. Nah. So if you're in Florida and in South Carolina, gators are walking looking like dinosaurs. Don't they look like giant, like dinosaurs? And don't they look like all kinds of stuff, right? Right? So you might want to look into that. I know that all kinds of stuff is going on. It's the most interesting thing. It's a time to be alive, but it's also a time, because you have to look at that, right? And I don't know about telling people to conserve keeping water bottles in your home, because that the water you buy in water bottles is gonna go off anyway. So you're wasting money by throwing it out. You wait until something happens, then you go clean out the place, right? So that's just some of the stuff that you should do. Make sure that you don't leave your pets outside. Nobody does that, right? You don't do that. Leave your pets outside in extreme heat like this. Don't leave your pets outside, right? Make sure that you keep yourselves covered, right? Make sure that you are doing what you can. Drink a lot of water, not sweet stuff, not the Pepsi, not the pop, not the sodas, not the sugary drinks, just plain water. Just drink a lot of water. It will help you to lose weight too. We have all been struggling to lose weight after Thanksgiving and Christmas. Dear God, what happened to us? Not me. Mine was a different issue, right? And so drink a lot of water. Drink more water. It's good for your skin. It will flush your systems out and so on, right? But keep those things in mind as you go through it, and pay attention to the news and do your own research. We all have computers. Say, yeah, show me your computer. You're looking at me through your computer. This is your computer, right? Right? Just open it, go into Safari or whatever your search engine is and just type in climate change, climate emergency. So what's happening in Europe is more than a climate change. It's an emergency because it's impacting what? People. And in some parts of Paris, in France, what they're doing is opening the parks and they're turning on hoses. They installed hoses to serve as sprinklers for people to cool down. Can you dig it? Isn't that something? That's something, right? So, the wealthy have just taken off on yachts and gone down to just chill in their villas and stuff because the sun is something. And if you don't believe me, get yourself under those black light things and look at your skin and see the sun damage. And here's the thing. Those of us who have more melanin in our skin, guess what you all say to yourselves? That it can't happen. Don't you say that? It can't happen. Look at me. This is me. I'm burnt. This is sunburn. This is not a tan. This is burned because I didn't have, and it stings a little because I didn't put the top on while I'm driving. That's only been for maybe about 2 days, right? If you notice, it's not on this shoulder because the shoulder is not the one that's facing the sun when I'm driving. If you also notice, one side of your face, the side of your face that faces the sun gets the most sun damage. So those of us who have more melanin in our skin, you probably have a dark spot on certain parts of your face, like on your forehead and so on. And you notice your family members have it and you say, oh, that's just a generational thing or family members have it. No, that's sun damage. The melanin in your skin does not protect you from sun damage. That was a misnomer and a lie. Let me help you with that. So no matter what your skin color is, you need to still be careful of sunburn. It's real. In fact, people with more melanin in their skin tend to have more skin damage because you think your skin can withstand the sun. It can't. You're human. Your skin still burns no matter what it looks like on the outside. Hello, somebody. That was a lie that was told by people who were racist and colorist. Don't listen to that. Listen to the science. The science that human skin cannot withstand sun damage. Hello. Are we listening? So no matter what color your skin is, please, I'm begging you, cover your skin during this time right through until it starts to pan out after August. For us here in Michigan, it's August, right? It starts getting better after mid-August. And then for those of you in other parts of the country, it probably starts evening out in September. Careful. Tread carefully. Climate change is real. Don't go into wildlife. They're angry and hot. And you will become meal. That's a real thing. You'll become meal for them. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You don't want to tempt fate. Don't do that. Okay? Okay? Enough? Right. So for people like me, I wear a hat. So when you see me out and about during the daytime, during summer, I have my hat on. I don't care. I wear a hat. It is what it is. It keeps me so I never have to go to a doctor one day and they're like, oh, we see something under your skin. Don't ever go to any doctor and they tell me they see something anywhere. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, not me. Take that somewhere else. Do you see what I'm saying? Keep yourself hydrated and water the plants. It's also more economical to water the plants early in the morning or later in the day. So you can set your sprinkler systems for that, right? Because if you do it during the day, it's just evaporating. So it's better to do it later in the evenings, right? After sundown or early in the mornings, like 5 o'clock before the sun comes out. Personally, I like it afterwards, right? So when I walk out, the water is on my feet or whatever. That's just me, right? So take care of that, right? And just keep praying that it will change, that there will come a change. Climate change, it's real. It's a climate emergency. And I feel like we're up next. Places like Arizona, Florida, the places that usually get warm, and Texas, I feel like they're going to have it. And it makes you wonder, what happens to the folks in Africa? In some parts south of the equator, folks in southern parts of South America and southern parts and in Africa, sub-Sahara Africa, right? Below the Saharan desert. And even the folks in Northern Africa tend to get very hot. So what happens to those people? What happens to the immigrants who were trying to get over from Africa into Europe? What's happening with them? Because they were detained in areas, what's happening with them? It makes you wonder and think, right? What about the folks that are in Central America where it's humid and hot at the same time? And the sun is so extremely hot, it feels like punishment, right? Think about that. So climate change is real. Well, the earthquake, we didn't have much control over it. That's really what's contributing to a lot of this, the erosion in climate, in the soil, right? So these are things to think about. So when you hear scientists say they're not talking hocus pocus. They've spent years and we've been collecting data for some time, so they know what they're talking about. I listen to them because they're the experts. I don't know anything about this stuff. I just read what they say, and I'm like, observation alone is telling me they're on the right track, right? Omarusa, I don't know. Should you pray for her? I'll leave that up to you. I don't know. She's gonna be in some dire straits pretty soon. It's not gonna be that tell-all book was the tell-all that did it. People don't forget that kind of stuff. So it is what it is, right? Thanks so much. It's Wednesday next week. We're gonna be off the 3rd through the 5th. So remember that. So the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. The 4th is July. Is July 4th. We'll all be celebrating independence and so on. Happy birthday, America! Yay! Right. So you'll all be red, white, and blue all day. Red, white, and blue. I might even wear red next week. Might wear red today. Fire sign. I'm total fire sign. That's what my kids tell me. Mom, you're just such a fire sign. Right? So I'm like, which one day we're going to talk, when we come back to break next week, we're going to talk about fire signs. Y'all want to talk about your zodiac sign? Remember that song? What's your sign, girl? Is it compatible to mine? Y'all want to talk about zodiac signs and what makes you up and why you are the way you are? Because one of my daughters is interested in this stuff, and she says that there's certain commonalities she finds amongst people who have fire signs in their birth composition. And I'm like, that's an accident of birth. You see why I don't believe in it? Because it's an accident of birth. I didn't have anything to do with that, kind of. I kind of was just made that way, was born that way. So I don't know if that is significant. But there are people who say it is. So one of these days we're going to talk about that, and it's going to blow your mind. You're absolutely going to be like, is that why I am the way I am? I used to think it was just my ethnicity that contributed to that because, as you know, I'm descendants of Europeans and Africans, right? My paternal grandfather is Irish, and my mother's ancestry is quite unique. I mean, my mother's father is Cuban, is from Cuba, hence why I look, and my mother's grandfather, her maternal grandfather, is Scottish. So I'm descendants of Europeans and Africans. So my ethnic composition, I felt like I used to think that that's why I'm a fire sign, is because that Hispanic Irish thing going on there, mixing with them Africans, was quite the thing. Right? So my ex-husband used to say, dang, I had to get it all. But I'm like, we don't get to choose the people who made us, do we? No, we don't get to choose our DNA. We don't have any control over that. But we can rewire our brains. So we've been engaging in rewiring our brains to not reflect that. So we're the best of both worlds. That's what I like to think of it. I like to think that what you see is I am trying to be the best of both worlds. So do me a favor, go to my website, harrietkamak.com, or go to the exodusfoundation.com. Buy my books. They're available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Anywhere books are sold, you can just walk in and ask for books by Harriet Kamak, and you will find them. It's one way that you help us to keep the Exodus Foundation going, to help us. This evening, we're going to a human trafficking summit downtown or Midtown. It's in Midtown, I think. And we're going to talk about what happens to folks who are trafficked and why certain things contribute. Certain things are contributing factors, and how we get policymakers and so on to be aware of these kinds of things, right? Thank you so much, everybody. Stay cool. Stay really cool today. Wear a hat, for God's sake. For the love of God in Christ Jesus, people, put a hat on. Please put a hat on. Put a hat on. When I see you all out there, I want to see hats. Hats, They're in the dollar store for $1. They don't have to be fancy, just something that keeps the sun, the direct rays of the sun from hitting, because when it hits your skin, it's like frying an egg. But we're humans, so we're thinking and we just keep going. All right. Stay hydrated. Stay cool. All right. See you tomorrow. Gotta go. Bye. But gotta go, folks. I got to go. Thank you. Love you all. Bye. Thanks so much, everybody. You make my day. You do make my day. Thank you. Thank you. I am loving it. You make my day. Thank you so much. Thank you